Hi, thanks for staying so late to listen to me talk. I just wanted to talk to you today about standing out as an intern or graduate designer. That's me on the left, in case any confusion. Bruce. I originally studied to be an animator here at Staffordshire University, it's like 100 metres that way. And now I'm a games designer, and I have been at Criterion for about 4 years. I've got to work on a range of projects, but mostly specialised around like vehicle play and second-to-second and game feel. And this is my favourite game concept. I don't know if you've ever seen this. Make your game complex, not complicated. So a good example of that might be Rainbow Six, which had a single game mode, one map, but a huge range of characters and ways to play the game. So that got players thinking about how they could do it without overcomplicating and putting people off. So I work at Criterion. I don't know if you've heard of us, I hope you have. But we are based in sunny Guildford. There's just over 100 of us now. And we're known for games like Burnout, Need for Speed. We worked on the Battlefield franchise, most recently making Firestorm. We've worked on Battlefront, doing their VR mission and Starfighter Assaults. And then more recently, our audio narrative teams have got to work on Sea of Solitude and Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order. I don't know anything about it. Please don't ask me any questions. Today, I'd like to talk to you about some of the key skills that we look for in interns and graduates at the start of their design journey. So at Criterion, when it comes to interns, we like to hire like one intern, design intern a year, but we hire interns for all of our disciplines pretty much. So this year we had a young girl called Leah, who's our intern, and she's from the University of Plymouth. So having seen lots of intern CVs and interviewed them over the years, the reason that we picked her was that she was able to glean insights from the things that inspire her and really get them into her game mechanics and her overall game loop. And she was also able to articulate and talk about those things in a really good way. So that's your first tip right there. How I'm going to do this talk to you today, I already hate that word agenda, it's very light. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the role of a designer within Criterion. And it might seem like a bit of a tangent, but hopefully it will give you a little bit of context for creative process and the skills that you might need to start thinking about as you do your courses. I will then roll that into how that relates to you guys, whether you want to be an intern or when you graduate. And then I will give you a little bit of interview tips that I think are pretty useful. Probably sure you've heard them all today for the multiple talks, but I'll do them anyway. So at Criterion, we don't expect designers to sort of just be the ideas. Everyone in the studio feeds into the creative process and the overall design of the game. We do, however, take responsibility for leading the discussions and using our own expertise and insights to really focus those ideas down to give the best player experience that we possibly can. So we basically split our skill sets into two different things, aspirations. The first of those is being the leader of the creative process. So designers should be leaders who drive their features through the creative process, which is collaborative amongst all the disciplines. So you really want to harness the creative power of everyone in your team to get the best that you can out of them, and then use your analytical skills to unearth coherent feature designs out of that. So basically, we have a creative process and we want to be leading it. The second of the aspirations is being able to craft powerful player experiences. So as game designers, our fundamental responsibility is to deliver the best possible player experience that we possibly can. Because we want to motivate our players and keep them from coming back. Keep them coming back, not from coming back, that's wrong. So there's a very distinct thing that we want to get out here, that we're not just making features, we're making experiences. So you want your players to feel something. So when you're going into making whatever you're making, don't just think, I'm making mechanic A, I'm not just making a jump. Like, how do you want the player to feel when you're making that jump? So as an example, in Firestorm, we decided to put a helicopter into the game. So how do we want the players to feel when they're flying a rickety old, well, not old, prototype helicopter around a battlefield? So you want them to feel like mobile and like they can go where they want to go, but also you want them to feel vulnerable, like they can get shot at any time. So you want to kind of keep them on edge and give them that experience. So with the creative process, we try not to segregate and silo our teams. So all the designers aren't over one side, engineers over the other, artists over here. We try to break ourselves up into like coherent feature teams and experience teams and get the expertise that we need to deliver on those experiences. So a team might have a designer, a producer, some engineers, a VFX guy, whatever we need to get that experience. We also have like variable workspaces. So all of our desks are on wheels, so we can move them around wherever we want to go. We've also got like big beanbag and sofa areas, like that could be open or closed depending on what we want to use them for. And again, like we do this because everyone feeds into the design of the game. So now that we've, just as an aside, just covered in post-it notes, which are your best friend. You'll really want things down. So we've got an iterative creative process that we use. We didn't come up with it. There's already been a lot of thinking into creative processes over the years. The one that we'd like to use is we looked at a method of design thinking from the Stanford Design School, and we basically evolved it to suit our purposes. So what does that look like? So if you're making a first-person shooter, you want to go out and do a load of research about what other first-person shooters are out there, what mechanics go into them, particularly around the sort of theme that you... Then you're going to want to what experiences you want out of yours, and really get the experiences and design principles sort of written down, because that will help clarify for the rest of your team what you're making. You then ideate within those constraints all the possible things that you could make to deliver on that experience. Obviously, you can't make everything that you want to make, so you need to synthesize those down into some really core things, and that might, you might get a group of things that are all kind of closely linked but not quite together. So then you might hop back to the ideate phase and redo that whole process a few times. Eventually, you'll get to a solution that you want to put in. So you'll want to test that on paper or in software. And once you've done that, it'll either work, and if it has worked, then congratulations, you're the first designer who's ever made something first time round. That's worked. Give yourself a pat on the back. More than likely not, there'll be something wrong with it or something you haven't thought of, so you'll need to hop back to one of these phases in order to come back again. Eventually, you'll get to the implement phase where you get it up to a shippable quality, and even at this point, someone from QA or a live testing or whatever will get hold of your mechanic and again break it because you've not thought about 64 people firing off a highly VFX weapon in a small room breaking the game. So that's kind of like a overview of our process. That's what works for us. When you come for an interview or something with us, we like to hear about how you guys work. How did you get to where you got to with your mechanics, with your game loop? Why did you make it the way you made it? What were the decisions you had to go through? So I'll talk a little bit about what sort of skills our designers have, or what we aspire to have. So here's a big wall of text. It's pretty scary, but my notes thing. So our design team spent a long time thinking about all of the skills that are necessary to deliver on both of those aspirations. Don't panic. I don't expect you to know all of these. Even me, an experienced designer, I'm still working on growing into some of these, getting good at them. But really what they'll do is help you really master whatever creative process that you intend to use. So what sort of out of that, what do we expect to see out of you when you come to see us or you apply to be an intern or you've graduated and you want a job? So if I go back to the giant wall of text, there are some of these that are more key than others for a designer on the start of their journey. And a lot of these are taught once you've got your job, or you're an intern and you're learning. So the things that we care about most are being a catalyst for creativity, designing with intent, maximising the value to the player, because that's who you're making it for in the first place. And then this little one down here, being a self-educator, so the ability to keep learning and growing as a designer. So if I put that on a less scary list. So those are kind of the key areas that we look for. But what does that actually mean? So a catalyst for creativity. So a designer should be the creative inspiration for their team. And they also should be encouraging inclusive collaboration between all of the disciplines. So if you have quite a large team and you get people that are maybe not getting involved in the conversations, but you know that they have good ideas, it's our job to kind of get that out of them and really get what we want. So you should be the creative center of your team. So again, we're not just ideas people, but we do expect designers to be able to bring their own set of imaginative ideas to the table and really get the team inspired and thinking about the features and experiences you're trying to make. So we do that by trying to be the creative spark. So again, if I'm putting a helicopter into the game, I will go away and do a lot of research on all of the cool helicopter stuff that's out there, what's been in popular media, what do they actually do physically, how do they work? And then I might cut that together into like a 5-minute video or something that I can show my team to really get people excited about it and think about how we might solve the problems that arise. So you want to inspire your team. So again, we're creative collaborators. So you want to empower your team and really give everyone a voice and just take everyone's ideas on board. And then encourage collaboration. So that's not just about bringing people in, but it's about thinking about who are the right people to be in an ideation session. What process do you want to use to get the ideas out of them? What process do you want to use to synthesize those ideas down? If you've got to do multiple ideation sessions, how do you switch them up so you're not just doing the same thing all the time to keep the energy up and keep everyone positive and to come at it in new approaches? So these are all the things that you should be thinking about as a designer, and they're all part of keeping the room positive and creative, which isn't as easy as you think it might be when you've got a large team of 100 people. So this is a big one for us, being an analytical thinker. So it's a critical skill for a designer to be able to see beyond what you're seeing, what you're playing, what you're hearing, and really question it and understand why it works. So some good examples of that are, you've all played The Last of Us? Yeah, good. The giraffe scene in that game, why does it make you feel the way it makes you feel? What did they do to do that? How did they think about that in the first place? Why are players in Destiny willing to grind for hundreds of hours when they've already reached the maximum light level, but they keep playing the game? There is a reason for it. You just need to dig and find those insights for yourself. So you need to be an imaginative questioner. And searching for those type of insights is a key skill for designers. So you want to keep cultivating that and be insightful. So next, designing with intent. So this is quite a critical skill as well. So you shouldn't just be putting ideas into the game or resolving an issue or fixing a bug without thinking about what it is you're actually trying to solve. Otherwise, you're just going to keep creating more problems that need to be fixed or changed later on, which is going to get your engineers and your artists quite angry at you. So to get around that, you need to define your goals. Solving a problem should always start with the intent. So what is the experience that you're trying to create? What are the problems within that experience? And what are the attributes of a solution? So yeah. This is all about what mechanics, what features, what you're trying to make the player feel. You then put those into your design principles. So design principles are there to give guidance to your team so they know how you want the game made and how you want the features made and how you want things fixed. So we create them quite early on once we know what the experience is. So in the process earlier where we had define. This is where we would do this. And just to sort of explain, a design principle is like a rule or a guideline or consideration that needs to be taken into account when you're making something. And they should just be really understandable. So if I go back to the helicopter example again, I'm going to keep doing this. So we said it should feel mobile and vulnerable when you're playing it. So what sort of a principle would go into that? So should feel mobile. So that's about flying the helicopter around. Hands up, anyone who's flown a helicopter. I want to put mine down, I haven't. No, no one. When you're playing a game, how many of you think that you know how a helicopter should fly? Yeah, there we go. Right, so there's an expectation. Helicopters are really complicated, by the way. If you're interested, take a look. If not, then I completely understand. So a principle might be, it should fly how the player expects, not how it actually flies, because they're really complicated and hard to fly. And you want to make that as simple as possible, but empower the player to make them feel like they should know. So that's quite a simple principle just to go by. So if you're doing anything in the game, making it in a way that doesn't go to that principle, then you need to have a rethink. So focus is another thing that goes into designing with intent. So we may or may not have stolen this from Apple. They're very good at what they do. But it's quite, you've got to think about what's important to the experience you're trying to create. And really hone in on those and actively make decisions about what you're doing. If you've got 10 things that you need to make, but you've only got a set amount of time to do it, so you might only get 5 of those things in, you need to start thinking about which of those are more important to the core experience that you're trying to make. Which leads us into maximising value to the player. So this is another area that we feel is super important. Designers are often seen as people who just want everything, like children in a candy store. It's all delicious, it's all great, we want it. But we don't have time to do that. And to be honest, a lot of things that we want, they won't make much of a difference to the game that we're trying to make. So we need to think about what our players value in what they're doing. So if you're trying to make a serious hardcore first-person shooter, do you really need those Splatoon shooter mechanics? Probably not. And then you think about what features and experiences will go into delivering that experience. You need to think holistically. So quite often what happens when you're making something is that you'll have tunnel vision just on what you're making. So with the helicopter, if I just went off to one side and just thought, oh man, this helicopter's really cool, and then I never actually think about how that fits into the overall game, then I've probably messed up, and so a bunch of other people. So you usually get to this phase when it's at a point where you put it into the game and people can play it. You need to take a step back and take feedback from everybody about how that thing is playing and be able to know how to act on it so that it fits in with the rest of the experience and really understand the value of that feature and what it's bringing to the table. And then you think about that within the context of the experience that you're making it in. So then you need to, as I hinted at earlier, prioritize effectively. So everything that you make in a game has a cost, and you always have a limited amount of time to do it, a limited talent pool, and a limited amount of money. So again, if you've got something that takes 5 weeks to make, that isn't really adding much to the game, but then you've got another 5 weeks to make something else that's going to change that player's life, it's pretty obvious what you're going to do. But when you've got a list of like 100 things that need going into a game, you need to be able to go away and really think about what it is that you're making and weigh that against what the players actually will want out of the game and make those priority decisions about what it is you're going to get your team making. And more often than not, you won't just do that on your own. You'll do it alongside your producers and your DDs and everyone who's managing people's time. But their considerations won't be the same as the designers. They'll be thinking about the product level thing. We're thinking about what the player's actually going to want to feel and do. Being a self-educator. So there's no definitive knowledge of what gets players playing games. As I said earlier, why do people grind away on Destiny for hundreds of hours when they've basically already finished the game? They enjoy it, but there's got to be a more core reason for that. So we need to constantly further our understanding of what motivates play and really the understanding of the design craft and how to develop our own creativity. And we do that by looking at experiences through a different lens and try to uncover whatever insights we can. So we do that by doing things like deliberately watching media. So that could be, you know, your favorite TV show on Netflix, a film, it could be a talk on GDC or Game Maker's Toolkit or something. But when I say watch it, I don't just mean watch it and sit back. I mean sit back, watch it, and really think about like what is it you enjoy about this or don't enjoy about it. You know, make some notes, whether they be mental or actual. Like try to pick apart the things that you watch and do in your lives, and like, because those are all going to feed into what you're making, right? And the same thing is true for like books and articles that you might read. So again, these could be design books, these could be novels that you like. It could be an article on Gama Sutra or something like that. Really pick it apart and take that into your own insights. I've heard a few people say this today, and it's absolutely true. Play a variety of games. If you're a Heroes of the Storm player and that's all you play, well done. Not that chap over there, he's shaking his head. You're a League of Legends man, aren't you? You know, that's great, but that won't give you much context for what else is out there. So you need to get outside of your comfort sort of zone and play things that you don't normally play, because there'll always be something that you can take out of a game that you can potentially use later on. You know, so there might be something from that racing game, like a UI element or something like that, that when you do your first-person shooter, you're like, oh, I remember, I got it out of that game. So really, and I don't expect like people to play every game that's ever out there, because we've all only got a finite amount of time, right? But just try to do things that you wouldn't normally do. And then obviously you're going to try to practice those skills in software, which I'll touch on in a minute. Well, right now, I'll change the thing in this. So when you go into software, there isn't a single studio in the world that's going to expect you to be software experts. Okay, you're not going to know how to solve every problem in software. I still absolutely don't, and I'm multiple years into my career. But that's okay. What we do like to see, though, is that you can demonstrate your skills and insights in those software packages, you know, whatever that might be. And then tell us about how you did that and why you did that. So be proactive. You know, Unity, Unreal, they're both free. Get out there, use them. And then specifically from a design craft, we're not expecting you to come up with the most polished thing in the world. We're designers, we're not artists, we're not audio people, we're not coders. So when you make things, think about the design of it and why you're making it and what you're really trying to achieve and make me feel. Which is that. Talk about why you made it. Why is just a word that I'm going to keep bolding and italicing because it's important. And then the last thing for software skills is making small but focused things is okay. I would rather you came to an interview after having shown me 5 smaller little experiences that are 5 minutes long that have a coherent game loop or a very particular mechanical skill you're trying to show off, rather than I tried to make Destiny 3 but I've utterly failed because it's just me making it, because you're not really going to see anything out of that. So focus what you're doing and show me what experience you're trying to deliver. So like that view of those skills. Again, I don't expect you to remember all of that, but hopefully you've taken some of it in, and it'll get you thinking a little bit about how you can put that into your work at university and how you can show us those sort of skills when you come to interview, should you get through. Which leads me on to this, interview tips. So it's okay to be nervous. I've interviewed quite a lot of people over the years, and I've not seen a single person who's not been like a little nervous. You know, some people have cried, some people have, you know, let it get to them. Other people do come in quite stony-faced, but you can still see that they, you know, struggle a little bit. Again, totally okay, expect it to happen. An interview for a design job should not be a memory test. If you've made something absolutely wonderful and you could spend half an hour talking about it, that's brilliant. I don't expect you to have memorized the whole talk the whole way through. Come up with your notes, like write down your design process as you're making things. If you turn up with all of this stuff and are able to talk through it, it's only going to strengthen, you know, your position, because you're able to justify what you've done in a coherent way that I can take in, and I can see your thinking, I can see your working. Again, and this goes for any games company, play our games. If you turn up and you've never played a single one of Criterion's games, I'm going to be like, you did know that you're interviewing here though, right? So play our games. Doesn't have to be all of them, one or two of them. And give us your insights about what you thought about them. What did you like? What didn't you like? Make it a conversation. Don't be sycophantic about it. You know, we all know that you want the job. But just be respectful about how you come in and offer those insights. And then this, again, why is important? This is the most important thing for any designers. You always need to justify what you're doing, and because we're the ones who are driving the rest of the team to make it. So again, if you're talking about one of the games that you've played that we've made, and you've got an insight about how you think it could be better, that's great. Doesn't mean that I'm going to think you're right or wrong, but what I want to see is your thought process and how you got to that conclusion. So yeah, always think about why, be insightful, and use those insights to really drive what you're thinking about creatively. So yeah. And that's me. I think we do have time if there's any questions. You all just want to go down the pub, don't you? Yeah. Cool. Well, I'm on Twitter. There's my thing. I'll be hanging around for a little while later if any of you need to talk to me. Hey.
Just a bit of a question, not really about what you talked about, but I'm just curious. What is A, the favourite game that you've worked on, and B, the favourite game that you haven't worked on?
But the favourite game that I worked on, I'm slightly biased here. So when we worked on Battlefront 2, so we did all the Starfighter Assault mode. So for me, growing up as a child, working on Star Wars was just like, that's a dream come true, right? And I got to go in, and having played all of the Star Wars games for many years, growing up, being able to have somebody come up to me and like, Alan, what should an X-Wing do? I'm like, this is brilliant. I can now just design all of this from scratch, and you get to work with Lucas and things like that along the way. So that's really cool. The favourite thing I haven't worked on, oh Christ. So before I became a designer, I used to be QA. So I don't think I could name a particular one, but there were a lot of projects where I was very sad. And that's, not, multiple companies. So I don't want to speak ill of them. So any more? Cool. I'll be around for a little while afterwards, probably epic things, so please come and speak to me or message me, and I'll try to get back to you.